Hello friends, welcome back. If you're new here, welcome. I am Vicky and you're with Nonna in the Cucina, which if I am saying that correctly is gravy in the kitchen. So we are going to have a delicious homemade Italian dish on Sunday. Now we actually did all this yesterday, Saturday, because a lot of the components were homemade. I'm not saying you need to do everything homemade, but I need you to get comfortable enough to do something from scratch. We made our lasagna noodles homemade. You can use boxed if you like. We made our Sunday gravy or the marinara sauce homemade. Buy a jar, buy a can, whatever, doesn't matter. We actually made our bread for our garlic bread homemade. You can buy them in the store if you would like, but I encourage you to at least take one of these opponents and make it homemade, and then you can use store-bought for the rest. And the next time you make a lasagna dinner, then you can add to that. So for instance, if you want to make homemade marinara, buy everything else store-bought. And then the next time you make it, make something else homemade. So you're going to make the marinara, and then you're going to incorporate homemade bread. And then the next time, make your homemade pasta. And eventually you'll get comfortable enough where you can do it all homemade in your kitchen from scratch. But you don't have to do all the components homemade, but pick one and make it homemade. Because we did do everything homemade, it did take pretty much all day Saturday to do it. And you're probably like, Grammy, I don't have time to do a whole day for one dinner. But that's okay. Do what you're comfortable with, do what you're willing to do, and go from there. Now when I make a casserole type dish such as lasagna, I go ahead and make two of them. That way I can have one now, or in this case for Sunday, and then I can have one in the freezer for a future date. So it did take a little bit more time to make two dinners, but at least I'm not making two separate dinners on different days where it would take 2 whole days to put everything together. If I would have had more 9 by 12, 13-inch pans that I put my casseroles in, I would have done even more. I have all the tomato products, I have flour, I've got eggs, I got all the things that I could have made more dishes homemade. I just don't have enough dishes to put them in. That's a number one goal for me this year, is to add more of the casserole dish to my stockpile of cookware. So, without further ado, aprons on, let's get started. But right now we're going to go ahead and get started on our pasta sauce or spaghetti sauce, and as the Italians call it, Sunday gravy. So we're going to put everything into a Dutch oven and just let it simmer for about an hour. So in the Dutch oven I'm going to add probably about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. I have 1 large onion, and I just diced it up pretty big because we're going to puree this anyway. And I have one of my frozen bags of carrots. We're just going to saute that just a bit. I have 5 small or 3 large garlic cloves that I minced. If you saw our pantry cleanup back in December of 2022, you saw I had these 35 ounces of strained tomatoes that I had gotten on sale one time at Lidl's. We're using one of those, and we're going to use 1 can of the Merlin roasted, well, they're fire roasted tomatoes. And I went ahead and took out 2 pounds of ground turkey, but use any kind of ground meat you like. And as I told you last time we made pizzas together, I didn't have the more shredded mozzarella, but I do have some sliced mozzarella. We're going to use that in our lasagna. We're going to make a bechamel sauce, which is a milk type gravy, instead of using ricotta cheese or cottage cheese. We're going to use a bechamel because that's what I have on hand. That's what's wonderful about having a pantry, is that if you don't have one item, you know you can create it with another item. I don't usually keep ricotta cheese in my house, only because the only thing I use it for is for lasagna, but I'm not going to run out to the store to get ricotta cheese or cottage cheese. But I know I have the ingredients to make a bechamel, and that's what we're doing today. And I have 3 of our frozen, more than a tablespoon of tomato paste. We're going to use that. So the onions and the carrots and the whole tomatoes, we are going to puree this into a creamy Sunday gravy pasta sauce. But first we need to get all of these vegetables sauteed very soft. That's probably going to take about 30 minutes. We have not added our garlic in yet. We want to get this cooked first. We want to cook this until the carrots are soft. They're not quite there, so we're going to let it continue a little bit longer. It's been about 10 minutes so far. And like I said, I want to cook them for about 30 minutes. Put the lid on so we can hold in that heat so we can steam them up very nicely. It's been 20 minutes and we have some beautiful color in this pan. I'm going to go ahead and add our garlic. Go ahead and add 3 of these tomato paste. That, you know how we save this when we open up a can of tomato paste and we don't need it all. We just put them in parchment paper, put it in a Ziploc bag, and stick it in the freezer. No waste. We're just going to cook that garlic just to get rid of the raw taste. Just give it some smoky flavor. When you start smelling the garlic, then you know you're ready to move on. Alright, I can start smelling that garlic. We're going to add the whole can of the fire roasted tomatoes. And if you don't have a box of tomato sauce like I have here, use canned tomato sauce, use homemade tomato sauce, or just use some crushed tomatoes. It doesn't really matter because, like I said, everything's going to get pureed. I added a little bit of water in this carton. Swishing the water into the can of tomatoes. I'm going to turn it down to a medium-low. Put about a teaspoon of salt, teaspoon of pepper, and a whole tablespoon of Italian seasoning. I'm going to put 2 tablespoons of sugar. And I will be adding some grated Parmesan cheese after we puree this. But I want this to simmer, like I said, for about 1 hour. This is the reason I want to make pasta sauce to put on the shelf, so we won't have to do this every time we need to make sauce. I'm going to add another 1/2 tablespoon of Italian seasoning. So now we're up to 1.5 tablespoons of Italian seasoning. Great, I got that down on low. Got the lid just slightly cracked for venting. Going into the pantry, I realized I didn't have any lasagna noodles. Yes, I could use macaroni or fettuccine or spaghetti, but I really want lasagna noodles. And we do have attachment for the KitchenAid to make flat pasta. So I decided I'm just going to go ahead and make some pasta with whole all-purpose flour. Don't know how much I would need for 2 pans, but if we have extras, that is okay. We can cook them and dry them out so they'll be ready to use at a future date. I have no idea how much flour I put in there. Maybe 3 cups. When I edit this video, I'll put it in there. So we're going to start off with about a teaspoon of salt. I have 2 eggs. 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And we're going to mix that in and slowly add in our water. Never made it in the KitchenAid before, but I was like, what the heck? Nope. Should have stuck to what I knew best. We're just going to do it by hand. Sticky, I added too much water, so I'm just adding a little bit more flour. It's our beautiful dough ball. Oh, the color of that with those eggs, beautiful. Alright, so we are going to wrap it up in some saran wrap. Because it needs to rest for at least 30 minutes to get the gluten developed in there. And then we can go ahead and make our noodles. Okay, it's been about 30 minutes. We're going to go ahead and puree this, and hopefully we don't make a huge mess. Now, if you do like your pasta sauce chunky, you don't have to do this. If you don't have a stick blender, put it in a regular blender or put a little bit at a time in a food processor. Just be careful because the contents are hot and sometimes the lid will explode off from the steam and the heat. But if you don't have a stick blender, please, I advise you to go ahead and invest in one. I have it turned all the way down on low. And I'm just going to ever so slightly go through here and give it a good puree. Until we get all the tomatoes and all the carrots and the onions all smooth. And if your sauce is a little too thick, add a little bit of water in it to start off about a quarter of a cup at a time until it gets the consistency you want. But I think my sauce is perfect. And when you are stick blending, do not blend, don't have the motor running, and then lift it up because you will have sauce all over your kitchen. Put your blender in, hit the pulse, turn it off before you lift it. Alright, I think we are good. I have 4 ounces of grated Parmesan cheese going in. We're just going to cook that in there for the next 30 minutes. Then we're going to move on to making our meat sauce and then a bechamel. Let's taste it and see if we need any seasoning. Oh, that is so good. I'm going to add just a pinch of salt. That is really good. And just a smidgen of pepper. You can see the cheese melting in there. And ladies and gentlemen, that's Sunday gravy. Turning it back up to a medium low and let that cook for another 30 minutes. So I decided I was going to go ahead and make a loaf of something like a French bread. So I have 3 cups of water, 2 teaspoons of yeast, 2 teaspoons of salt, and I have 5 cups of flour in there at the moment. And I'm just going to add 2 teaspoons of sugar. And we're going to mix that and see if we need to add any flour to it. This dough is supposed to be a no-knead dough. We just have to let it do its slow rise. So I'm just going to go in here and scrape all the bits and pieces off of the bowl wall. And it's very sticky, but it said it's supposed to be sticky. So we're going to cover it up. And we're just going to leave it right here. Now we're going to go ahead and get started on the meat. A little bit of olive oil because this is a lean turkey. We'll get the pan nice and hot. I did move the sauce over, and we'll get that turned on over there. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and break this up, get it all cooked. Got the ground meat still cooking, and we'll just come over here and stir it up. But while we're doing that, we're going to go ahead and make our lasagna noodles. So we already made the pasta. We let it rest for a little bit more than 30 minutes. I have a small piece. I have a bowl of flour. We're going to coat that in the flour. We're going to feed it through, fold it in half, feed it through again, fold it in half, feed it through again, and then that's when we're going to start moving our dial down until we get the thickness we want. If it feels a little sticky, just add a little flour on it and continue. I went all the way to an 8, and that is perfect. I'm going to sit here and continue to do the rest. And then we'll get these boiled up. We got our ground turkey into our pasta sauce. Now we're going to go ahead and cook our pasta. And then once that's done, we're going to make our bechamel. Okay, our water is up to a boil. Now we're just going to add our pasta in there. We don't want to stir it vigorously because that's just going to tear our pastas up. Just going to give it a slight little toss. And we're going to cook that for maybe 5 to 7 minutes. Got the large baking sheet and put some avocado oil, pepperoni, and we want to, that is very warm. lay our pasta out just so we can keep them flat. That is all of the pasta. Had to put gloves on because they were hot. Now we're going to go ahead and get started on the bechamel. I need to fill my olive oil. Well, we'll use avocado. So I got about 2 tablespoons of avocado oil. Put 2 tablespoons of butter. We're going to make a roux, just like we do for any other kind of gravy. Secret ingredient for a white sauce is nutmeg. Just a pinch. You don't need a lot. The meat sauce is ready. Our pasta is ready. And this is the same pan we cooked the meat in. Didn't even bother washing it. This is the bowl for the flour that we used when we made our pasta to keep it from drying out and getting icky. No waste. We're going to put about 4 tablespoons in here. Perfect. And this is A2 milk powder that we just added to some water. And that's what we're going to use. About 3 cups of milk. Pepper and salt to taste. Maybe a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. We'll start with that. We're just going to cook that until it thickens up beautiful. Alright, now we're going to add some Parmesan cheese. Maybe a cup. Let's start with that and see what we get. Well, it's thickening up beautiful. watered, so I add about another cup and a half, so we're about 4.5 cups in here. It has been rising for 4 hours, and it is beautiful, and it's sticky. The recipe did warn us that was going to happen. So we're going to go ahead and roll these out into logs. Got a nice helping of flour right here on our bench. And it's sticky, sticky, sticky. I'm using the bowl scraper as a helping tool just to knead it just a bit. Just eyeballing it into half. Really don't know what I'm doing here. We're learning this together. I know that it's not working. Roll it up as tight as I can. Tucking in the ends. Now we could have weighed the dough and then came up with what half of it would be, but you know me, I'm not that particular. Maybe about 18 to 20 inches. Sounds about right. The baking sheet with 2 pieces of parchment paper, bigger than what the width is. I'm actually going to use the parchment paper as my divider. I don't know if you can see that. We're going to cover this with saran wrap. And now we're going to let it do a second rise. Alright, now we're ready to assemble. So we're going to put a little bit of our meat sauce on the bottom. Just so our pasta can have something to adhere to without sticking to the pan itself. These are They're all random size because they are homemade. And homemade is better than store-bought. Beautiful, beautiful. Alright, now we're going to put a layer of sauce on top of that. Sprinkle Parmesan cheese on top. And one of these is going to be dinner for Sunday, and the other one's going to go in the freezer for a future date. Have some mozzarella, and this is sliced. If you do have shredded, I'd prefer that, but I do not have any shredded. This is going to fall apart perfect. Now we're going to put some bechamel on top of that. And then we're just going to repeat. A perfect amount of pasta. Could not have done better if I planned it. Oh, beautiful. So we have a little bit of sauce in here. We're just going to smear that on the top of this last layer of noodles. lasagna is ready. One I'm going to wrap up, stick in the freezer. The other one I'm just going to wrap up and put in the refrigerator. Alright, so now we are ready to bake this. This plastic wrap did stick, but that's okay. We can get this off. And we have the temperature set for 375. And we're going to go ahead and put our bread in the oven. And that is our bread. They took 35 minutes. The internal temperature, and they were 200 degrees, and we are done with the bread. So now we need to let them cool off completely before we cut into them. So it is Sunday morning. I need to go ahead and get some garlic roasted. I would have had whole bulbs of garlic. I would use those. But you know, when my garlic is starting to go where it's going to go bad, I just put them in vinegar jars and stick them in the refrigerator to preserve them. So we're going to take this garlic that's in the vinegar and we're going to roast it. I have the oven set on 400 degrees. I have my small cast iron pan here, and we're going to go ahead and get started on roasting some garlic. So I'm going to tilt you down and show you what we're doing. Now, if I was just garlic that we put in some vinegar to stick in the refrigerator to keep them from going bad, the vinegar will not transfer in the final product. So we're just going to wipe them off a little bit. I think I'm going to do 6. I do have one large one right here. Well, they're all pretty much large. So I got a paper towel. I'm just going to pat and dry. I'm not even going to worry about cutting them or anything. Just a little bit of avocado oil on those. And a pinch of salt. And I'm just going to put this in the oven for about 45 minutes. I don't need both of these. One of these I'm actually going to stick in the freezer to go with the lasagna we're putting in the freezer. But we're going to go ahead and get this cut open. Oh, perfect. It's not spongy. It's going to have a good bite to it. Oh, yum. Oh. It has been 45 minutes for the garlic. I have a little bit of avocado oil in this bowl. Oh, they're so beautiful. Look at that. Look at the color. Gorgeous. Gorgeous, gorgeous. We're not going to waste the oil in here because it is full of delicious flavors. Just taking a fork and smashing it into the oil. I think I'm going to put this in a food processor. 2 tablespoons of butter along with the garlic and the olive oil. Do not want to waste any of this delicious goodness in this bowl here, so we're just going to scrape until we get everything out. Add a piece of aluminum foil. I have our bread. We're going to smear this butter, oil, garlic compound all over this bread. You can see the beautiful garlic in there. All the roasted bits. Oh, beautiful. And that will be ready for dinner. And that's what's for dinner. I have one lasagna right here that I will put in the oven for about an hour to heat that up. And our garlic bread with some roasted garlic and some avocado oil and butter. We'll just put this in the oven for probably about 10-15 minutes just to warm it up. I have another pan of lasagna. I got it wrapped with saran wrap. This is going in the freezer. And the bread, I'm going to wrap that up in saran wrap, and that's also going into the freezer. So we have a meal today and a meal for the future. So like I said at the beginning of the video, you don't have to do everything homemade. Pick a component, make that item homemade, use the store-bought ingredients for the other components. But get comfortable in the kitchen, make one thing homemade, make a double batch so it could go in your freezer, and then the next time you need to make lasagna, you'll take two components and make those scratch made, and then use the store for the other ingredients. Always make two, put one in the freezer, and then just build on your skills. Learning how to cook home-cooked, real ingredients, nutrient-dense meals is a learning technique. So just get in the kitchen, learn something new every time you're in there. Make double batches, stick it in your freezer. So if you find any value to this video, if you would, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. It will help the channel grow and more people can see what we're doing in Grammy's kitchen. And if you don't mind, go ahead and subscribe. We would love to have you part of our Grammy family. So until next time, you have a blessed day. Bye, friends.